similarities and differences. There are, without a doubt, similarities between the event aggregator and mediator examples that I've shown here. The similarities boil down to two primary items: events and third-party objects. These differences are superficial at best, though. So the primary difference are events and third-party objects. Is event aggregator the same as observer? Short answer: event aggregator equals centralized pub/sub equal a flavor of observer. More precise answer: observer classic, subject to observers, event aggregator, publishers to event pass to subscribers. The event aggregator is just a middleman version of observer. Instead of object A directly holding a list of observers, you have a shared event bus that everyone talks to, or every observer talks to, instead of directly connection to subject or object A directly holding list of observers. So it kind of removes the dependency. It's an improvement to the classic observer pattern, but but it's not as you don't remove all the dependencies like the mediator. So like you can think of that as like in the middle ground. So the bottom would be the observer, the middle is the event aggregator, and the upper layer is the mediator. Why he separates event aggregator from mediator? Because even though both use events, a third-party object, they serve different purposes. And the key difference is again where the workflow logic. Event aggregator, pub/sub, what it really is, it is just a message router. It does not coordinate workflow, contain business logic, decide what should happen. It only forwards events. Example, event bus that trigger parameter string menu click foo closing string, and then somewhere else event bus that on parameter string menu click foo show foo page. So this event bus that trigger and event bus that on actually just used to forward the events. It doesn't really because of this specific thing happen just like with mediator does. So it's fire and forget. So the event bus does not know what foo means, even though it has that as a parameter. So you got the trigger method, menu click foo parameter, and then evented bus on with the menu click foo show foo page parameter. Now the event bus does not know what foo means, does not coordinate anything, does not care who listens. It's fire and forget. That's why the author says the event aggregator facilitates a fire and forget model. The sender doesn't care if anyone is listening. Fourth, mediator. What changes? Mediator is not a router. Mediator is a workflow controller. It listens intentionally to specific events, then coordinates multiple objects. So it is not fire and forget, just like an event publisher where it fires it to a list of objects that subscribe. So it's also not a router. It's a workflow controller again. It's worth reiterating that it doesn't just route it, just like with the event aggregator. It listens intentionally to specific events. So it also like listen to an event, just like with event aggregator, but it coordinates multiple objects aside from just listening. Example from the text, my framework that on parameter string menu click foo closing string this that do stuff. But then inside do stuff method, we have instantiate multiple objects, set up event handlers, coordinate them. This class, my workflow, is a mediator. This class, my workflow, is a mediator. Why? Because it contains business logic, it coordinates multiple objects, it knows who should interact, it manages workflow. That's not just event forwarding, or it's just not router. That's orchestration, the clean separation. Here's the difference in one table. Event aggregator, message router, mediator, workflow controller. Event aggregator, fire and forget. Mediator, intentional coordination. Event aggregator, no business logic. Mediator contains business logic. Event aggregator, unknown publishers and subscribers. Mediator, known participants. So another thing that might not be intuitive is that an event aggregator does not really know the publisher and the subscriber. It's just there to contain or to route what the publisher wants to route to the observer. So it removes dependency, but at the same time it removes control, right? So event aggregator, passive, mediator, active. The line that matter most in the whole passage, this one. In the case of an event aggregator, the third-party object is there only to facilitate the pass-through of events. That is the entire definition. So it only to facilitate the pass-through of events. Event aggregator passes messages, nothing more. Mediator makes decisions, coordinate behavior. 7. Why the book warns not to mix things? Because beginners often see central object handling events and calls everything a mediator. But if that object doesn't contain workflow logic, doesn't coordinate behavior, just forwards events, it's not a mediator, it's pub/sub. When they are used together, very important, this is actually how large systems are built. UI component to event bus to mediator to system components. So as you can see, earlier we discussed how the publisher and observer before mediator, but as now you can see, we have a UI component first, which is the React, the functional component to event bus, being published. So this is how the observer pattern are applied in React. And then up the layer, before the backend, we have mediator, and then system components, which is the backend component. So event bus, they couple unrelated parts. Mediator coordinate related parts. That's why in the example, menu, trigger event aggregator. Workflow listens and coordinates mediator. They are layered. So again, menu triggers event, which is event aggregator. Workflow listens and coordinates, which is a mediator. So they are layered. Express middleware example, why he mentions it. Express middleware behaves like a mediator chain. It receives a request, modifies it, decides next step, controls flow. It's not broadcasting events randomly. It's controlling workflow. So Express middleware behaves closer to mediator than pure pub/sub. Final mental model, the one you should keep. If the central object only forwards messages, event aggregator, pub/sub. If the central object decides system behavior, it's mediator. Ultra simple analogy, event aggregator, WhatsApp group, people post messages, others react. Mediator equal project manager. When someone says something, the manager assigns task. So if a WhatsApp group, you post a message in the group, then others just react, it's a event aggregator pattern. But for a project manager, when someone says something, let the manager assign tasks. So the manager, again, just like with the manager before, is a mediator. He is the one assigning tasks and then coordinating with employees. So events, both the event aggregator and mediator use the events in the example shown. As event aggregator obviously deal with events, it's in the name after all. The mediator only uses events because it makes life easy when dealing with modern JavaScript web app frameworks. So the mediator doesn't really need or doesn't tangled with events. It just needs that because that's how JavaScript framework is. It needs events to attach to a layout in a HTML, but it doesn't necessarily need that to consider a code or logic a mediator. There's nothing that says a mediator must be built with events. You can build a mediator with callback methods by handing the mediator reference to the child objects or using several other means. So you can build a mediator with callback methods instead of events by handling the mediator reference to the child object using other means. So the difference then is why these two patterns are both using events. The event aggregator as a pattern is designed to deal with events. The mediator though uses them only because it's convenient. Third-party objects. By design, the event aggregator and mediator employ a third-party objects to streamline interactions. The event aggregator itself is a third party to the event publisher and the event subscriber. So by design, the event aggregator are actually a third party from the publisher and the subscriber. It acts as a central hub for events to pass through. So as well with mediator, they are also employ a third party object, so they are kind of like a third party object with the subscriber and the publisher. The mediator is also a third party to other objects though. So where's the difference? Why don't we call an event aggregator a mediator? The answer primarily depends on where the application logic and workflow are coded. In the mediator's case, the business logic and workflow are aggregated into the mediator itself. The mediator decides when an object should have its methods called and attributes updated based on factors the mediator knows about or based on the rules that the mediator, the writer of the mediator cares about. And that will depend which methods is called and attributes are updated, or which method are open for public and which attributes can be changed. It encapsulates the workflow and process, coordinating multiple objects to produce the desired system behavior. The individual objects involved in this workflow know how to perform their task. But the mediator tells the object when to perform the task by making decisions at higher level than individual objects. So the objects connecting the publisher to subscriber actually knows the method on that subscriber, but the mediator decides if or when that will happen, or if that is allowed at a specific point in time. A mediator might use events to make decisions, but it is definitely not fire and forget. A mediator pays attention to a known set of inputs or activities so that it can facilitate and coordinate other behavior with a known set of actors, which is the objects. In the case of an event aggregator, the third-party object is there only to facilitate the pass-through of events from an unknown number of sources to an unknown number of handlers. All workflows and business logic that needs to be kicked off is put directly into the object that triggers the events and the objects that handles the events. An event aggregator facilitates a fire and forget model of communication. The object triggering the event doesn't care if there are any subscribers. It just fires the event and moves on. So, in case of event aggregator, if you want to kick off an object or some method that you don't want to use, the responsibility went to the publisher or the object sending that to a subscriber, because the event aggregator facilitates a fire and forget. Relationships when to use which. Understanding the similarities and the difference between an event aggregator and a mediator is essential for semantic reasons. It's equally important to know when to use which pattern. The basic semantics and intent of the pattern inform the question of when, but experience in using patterns will help you understand the more subtle points and nuanced decision that must be made.